Entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, continuing our chats about fantasy football today. We're going to be talking a bit about draft strategy, some busts, and maybe some running backs that we don't know what to do with. If you want to get into a draw for 20 DK bucks, there are 3 ways to do so. 1, smash the like button to the episode. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section and tell me who your biggest bust. And then I'm talking about like, hey, Albert Wilson, I don't think he's going to be good. It's a legitimate bust, a high-end bust for the season. You leave that in the comment section. Boom, you're going to draw for 20 DK bucks. Also, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, wherever you download podcasts. Leave a 5-star review, DraftKings handle, something nice about the show. This is the currency that Pat Mayo deals with. It is the podcast review game. The other way to do it, follow me on Instagram at the PME. When you see one of the football pitchers go up, give it a heart, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and boom, you too will be in a draw for 20 DK bucks. Winners announced on next Monday's show. Also, next week, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Canada, you got holidays coming up. I will have the initial breakdown. I'm going to have Chris Meany in studio. We're going to try to go through all my individual positions and try to mesh them together. Then the week after, I'll have the Cust on. I'll have Garion on. We'll talk about the actual top 200 rankings for PPR purposes for the 2019 season. If you've missed any of the previous fantasy football episodes to date, there's been a bunch. Hit the description or the comment section of this video or podcast, and you can find everything there. My full rankings list up on dkplaybook.com. Now that we got that out of the way, I'm very excited to bring in the guest today. We've never actually, had a sit-down one-on-one talk. You might know him from Instagram or YouTube, the fantasy football counselor. It is Joseph Robert, my man. What's happening?
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be on. Been watching your show for years, and you've had years to wow me, and guess what? You've wowed me. So I like what you're doing here, and I appreciate you having me on.
So first of all, I think that you're a really cool story about getting into the fantasy football industry, and just like, do you have the best fantasy football Instagram account of anyone? Because it seems like
I got to say, yeah. And partly the reason is because I've been interactive, and I say that humbly. A lot of people say, oh, you're so arrogant. You say you've got the best Instagram, verified Instagram, #1 following, most followers. And the thing is, I was the first adapter to it. So I think that kind of gave me the advantage. I saw the trend of Instagram emerging. That was when they had like 10-second videos, no story modes. I was there vlogging since like 2015 I started. So yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm #1 Instagram.
See, that's awesome. Yeah, I find... the interaction that you do with everyone is pretty awesome. So at FF Counselor on Instagram, if you don't know, I'm sure you do. If you're following this, you're probably following him as well. But I would find it hard just to interact as much as you do. I mainly focus on Twitter. I always thought that Twitter, as it pertained to fantasy football and news, was the better medium, but I may have been totally wrong about that.
Instagram's super interactive. I love the story mode, the swipe up option, and again, Twitter's a little bit better where you continue the conversation, thread wise. But when you look at emerging platforms, Instagram is #1. So I just went with the best platform and I built myself up on there, and very grateful to be in the position that I'm in.
So one of the big things, it really seems like you and I had a very similar start to breaking into the industry now, and like your YouTube channel is doing fantastic numbers. You're obviously the Instagram account the most followed. That's pretty good from what I hear. The thing is, like, a lot of people start out, they write for free for websites, and they do that for years and years and years, and that a lot of people just kind of peter out. Maybe they start a podcast. It seems like you went to video right away, and the tone that you use, I think, is awesome. Like, there's no pussyfooting around it. It's right. Pick this guy, don't pick this guy. This guy is horrible. Pick this guy. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. You're right, you're right. But at least you have an opinion on things. That's what I love.
Right. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of fluff in the industry. That's why I came up with the no fluff thing, because everybody's literally copy and paste rankings every single year. These guys finished on top last year. Let's pick them again this year. And we know over at least 50% of those, let's say, top running backs don't finish on top again. So literally sometimes people's first round draft picks are a total bust or a mess, right? So I go in there, I deep dive, I create the Cuddy system, which we can get into, a way to draft in your head to make sure your player's optimal for their roster. And I just got sick of the outdated, and again, no offense to anybody, that does magazines. I give you guys credit for putting out content, but those magazines get outdated pretty quickly. So I said, I'm sick of this. I want to just change change it. I want to disrupt the industry. So again, sometimes my takes are a little bit hot, but usually, like, for the most part, I am accurate for the most part. So I just got sick of the way things were, and I tried to change things up, and it's working.
So what would you say has been your like claim to fame so far? It was like just a big call. I know I just don't draft Odell has been pretty successful for you the past 2 years.
Well, I've been pretty good with that. I mean, for 2 years, let's break it down. He finished 83rd in PPR. I understand he's injured. So many people like hound on me. Joe, he's injured, doesn't count, but durability plays a huge factor when you're acquiring a fantasy football player. And this guy was a top 4 or 5 wide receiver the past couple of years. So he finished 83rd amongst wide receivers a couple of years ago, 15th amongst wide receivers last year. So 2 years in a row, I'm right by saying do not draft Odell. This year, again, new quarterback, new system. I'm still going to say do not draft him. This year, he could actually do well, I think. But the problem is, not even necessarily the problem, but I would rather have somebody else like an Adams or a Michael Thomas instead, someone a little more secure, especially at the end of the first round, not investing again in Odell.
So what are we thinking about in terms of like overall draft strategy? What's your mantra on that? Like, when you go in, obviously you have the guys in your head that you want, and that's something you talk about, but are there just complete cross-offs? Like, no matter if this guy falls to me here, I'm still not taking him?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Cuddy system, consistency, upside, durability, depth, and youth. If they don't have that, then I try to keep them off my radar. Guys like Dalvin Cook, I'm still not sold on him. He's played 15 games in 2 seasons, not sold on him. So my draft strategy going in is first round, secure a solid running back, minimal committee. Second round, it depends, again, where you draft. So if you're drafting early in 2019 fantasy football, you want to get a running back. If you're going at the end of the first round, you may want to consider getting an ace wide receiver and then doubling up on running backs rounds 2 and 3. That's why I kind of created this course called 16 rounds, where I give you kind of draft strategies, and we kind of, instead of just looking at a consensus list, I break down who to draft in each round. It's pretty amazing. It's a new trend I've created here.
You're creating the trend. Where can everyone find that?
16 rounds, ffcounselor.com. It's a draft solution. So I offer video training with basically a blog of all my information, who to draft in each round. And I update that up until the season starts. So I'm on top of everything in that. Sleepers, breakouts, everything is in there.
So what are you seeing? You said like running backs early in the first round. It does seem like the first 4 coming off the board are going to be Barkley, Zeke, McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara. I'm sure those are probably your top 4 as well.
Well, here's the thing, right? I kind of like David Johnson ahead of all these guys, and people are going to think I'm crazy. But again, what happens is people don't really talk about this. It's not one of those things people talk about. People talk about those buzzwords, sleepers, busts, stuff like that. Well, what about guys that are, what goes up must come down? This term is not really brought up because the guys that finish on top, it's very unlikely that the next year they finish the same place they were last year. So I'm seeing a possible decline in guys like CMC this year. And again, so many things happen that change every year. So you can't just literally copy and paste. Mind you, these guys are work studs, and I don't blame you for drafting them first, but understand there's going to be some shifts and changes, and I try to compensate and adapt to those.
So why is it David Johnson that you'd have above these? I mean, you can make the case that having Kyler Murray, a new offense, it does seem reinvigorated, but if Kingsbury is going to go full air raid, it might open up passing lanes, but I would expect to see a decrease in his overall receptions. That was such a big part of DJ's game of being the number 1 fantasy running back that maybe he's not going to be on that same level as a McCaffrey or a Barkley, even if they do decline a bit.
Yeah, I can see that debate. A lot of people saying that, especially with the air raid and stuff like that. And we know Murray can run the ball himself, but I still think he's going to get the goal line work, still around 12 touchdowns. Not only that, when I met him, he endorsed the brand a couple of years ago when I first got into this, when I had this fantasy frame. We can get into that later. And he's got really good work ethic. He's the All-American athlete, love his attitude, super nice guy. And we had this talk where he's like, yeah, I got to prove the haters wrong. And a lot of people have been on him for having mediocre years past couple years due to the injury. But remember last year, his floor, he finished 9th in PPR, having that terrible year. So I can only imagine there's no way but up from there. So assuming and compensating that guys like CMC could come down a little bit and him go up. And we've also seen his ceiling of 400 plus PPR fantasy points in 2016. I think the ceiling is there. I think the talent is there. And I think he's going to get the opportunity, and he's got the work ethic. So I'm sold on him, and I feel warm and fuzzy drafting him in the first round.
All right. I mean, if you said he's over those other 4, would you take him number 1 overall?
And, we're doing this followers versus followers league on Instagram, and I did actually go with him first overall. I'm comfortable with that.
All right. So what does your team look like if you draft David Johnson first? When you get back to the swing, let's say we're playing 12 teams here, and picks 24 and 25. Do you get another running back and a wide receiver, or do you just see what the board has done so far and react to that?
Now, typically my 60 rounds for this year, I'm telling you to at least go 2 running backs and a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds. But here's the thing. If you get David first overall, or let's say Zeke first overall, come back around 12-person league, you're looking at guys like T.Y. Hilton. If you're lucky, you may get Mike Evans. I may consider Mike Evans at that late second round pick. But again, I'm almost comfortable with going, and this sounds crazy, but going Derrick Henry at the end of second round. Now, that's a whole other story on why I like Derrick Henry, but I love him this year. I think he's found his groove. But you can go, David Johnson, come back around, get Derrick Henry, come back around and secure David Montgomery or Josh Jacobs and get a 3-headed monster at running back. And there's still a ton of wide receivers you can get later, which we can get into if you want to talk sleepers.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Derrick Henry for a second, because I am absolutely not sold on Derrick Henry. It seems very flash in the panty. He's someone, if we're talking about like consistency, I know the upside is there, most definitely with Derrick Henry, but if this is a situation where you ask me to draft Derrick Henry in the 3rd round or Dion Lewis in the 15th round, like there could be a situation that we fall into where the gap in their touches just isn't that huge that still limits what Derrick Henry's upside could possibly be. Like, I don't think that 4-game run at the end of last season is something that we should really count on.
I totally agree with you not trusting him because he's one of those guys, he falls under my saying, years to wow me, and I'm not really wowed, but he kind of did wow at the end of the season. Now, he did talk to his mentor, Eddie George, and Eddie said to him, former player, running back, if you guys don't know, but what he said, I saw this on a YouTube video, did some research, did some digging on him, and Eddie George said, listen, you got to get your ass into gear. If you don't do it, your career's on the line. You can get cut here, and use your body. Start, using that ability, the God-given ability that you have. And he took that information and really started to, use that at the end of the season. And we've already heard the GM of the Titans say that they're going to make him a focal point of that offense. And we saw the increase of volume at the end of the season. He is primed for an amazing season. Not only that, where there's also talk about him wanting to stay on the field, or like the coaches wanting to stay on the field to protect Mariota a little bit more, and he's got that big body to do it. All signs pointing to this guy to be an absolute workhorse for this year. I'm hoping that he is, because he's a really good guy from what I see. He's got good work ethic, and I'm excited for him.
So I guess my biggest concern here is that, yes, you can pass to Derrick Henry, and maybe this will be a philosophy change with the new offensive coordinator in Tennessee that, hey, we'll start passing to Derrick Henry out of the backfield. I wouldn't count on that. There's a reason you didn't cut Dion Lewis. That's probably still going to be primarily his role. Plus, you have the health of Mariota is always going to be a concern, whether he plays 14 games, 16 games, or 4 games. You just never know with Marcus Mariota. But even if you look at their division and you see Jacksonville has improved just by getting rid of Blake Bortles and inserting Nick Foles,
right.
that has to make them better. And that's still a pretty legit defense. The Colts, they're one of the Super Bowl favorites at this point. They should be pretty good and out in front in a lot of these games. And the Texans look like they're going to be pretty good as well, at least offensively, that if you get into boat races with these guys, and this can work one of 2 ways, that if Tennessee's offense is up to snuff, then we're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry games where he gets 20-plus carries on the ground. And whether or not he does anything out of the backfield, it doesn't really matter as long as he's getting those goal line touches and the volume is there on the ground. But I just worry that he's not able to chip away. And I always address this from like a PPR perspective, because that's every league that I play in at this point.
Right, me too.
And it translates over to DraftKings really, really easily, because that's also full point PPR. But if they get behind in these games, it feels like he can be boxed out due to game flow if Tennessee's not going to be good. And frankly, I don't project them to be very good.
Right. And that's what makes fantasy so much fun, the difference of opinions. And, I totally see your point of view. And he's not going to be a PPR monster, but if you have 2,000 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns, that's going to translate to a lot of things.
2,000 rushing yards is, if we're going to talk about like 99th percentile outcomes, like that's what it is. What's a reasonable projection for him?
I don't know. 1,400 rushing yards, I definitely see as a floor.
If that's the floor, then he's going to be pretty damn good. I'm still a bit dubious on that, just because of these game flow concerns that I have. The talent is undeniable. He's going to be very good when he's used, but when I see these game logs, and I'm trying to project it out in my head. I'm like, oh, Derrick Henry, they got down by 21 points in the second quarter. He ended up with 7 carries for 53 yards and no touchdowns. He seems like, of all of the running backs in his tier, and he's in a tier with guys with a lot of question marks, and maybe he does have the most upside of all, because like if you talk about a 1,400-yard season, double-digit touchdowns, he's going to end up being a running back 1. There's no question about that. But if he gets in, like when you compare him to someone like, let's say, Aaron Jones, for example, whose role it's probably on a very similar basis. Like, we think that he's going to be the guy, but we're not 100% sure on this. Green Bay is not a team that runs the ball a ton historically, but Matt LaFleur coming over, maybe he found something with Derrick Henry at the end of last season. All of a sudden, Aaron Jones is going. But I would put those two guys in a very similar bucket. The only difference being is that I think Derrick Henry is a better talent, but obviously Aaron Jones probably has more scoring potential because he plays in a way better offense.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Jones. I think he's a safe RB, but if you look at his attempts, he maxed out at 17 attempts last year. That's not enough. Where you see the Titans give Derrick Henry the ball a lot more, especially with Aaron Rodgers this year. I think he's going to start being on the move a little bit more as well. It's going to be interesting to see, but Aaron Jones, I just think safe when I see him. He's not a guy I'm targeting. I don't see the upside though.
I mean, I guess the upside is if we just kind of project what Matt LaFleur did with Derrick Henry at the end of last year, and he brings that philosophy to Green Bay, and maybe, I mean, there's already rumblings that he's clashing with Aaron Rodgers over the play calling, that if this just turns out to be an Aaron Rodgers thing, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball 50 times a game. It's going to be a moot point anyway. But if they can end up with some sort of stability in the backfield and like, hey, Aaron Jones, you're playing 70% of the snaps. We're going to get you your 15 carries on the ground no matter what. If we're up in games, you'll get more, but we'll also use you out of the backfield as a pass catcher, then I'm kind of intrigued, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it could be a safe RB2, and I think both these guys are an RB2 consideration. That's why I emphasize secure that solid running back minimal committee, secure your Zeke, your CMC, whoever you want early on, and then you feel warm and fuzzy drafting these guys as a RB2. That's what you should consider.
Absolutely. So these guys that we talked about at the top, you talk about David Johnson, lumping them into tiers. If everyone heads to dkplaybook.com or checks out the running back ranking show, I had a tier of 4 guys. David Johnson was a part of tier 2 with the Bells, with the Melvin Gordons, and those guys of the world. I did think that there was a clear-cut top 4 in terms of Barkley, Zeke, McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara as it pertains to PPR scoring. Obviously, in standard, that gets flipped around a little bit. Those guys are still, I think, the best 4, but I think they're closer to some of the other guys on the second tier. The pass catching really separates a lot of these guys. So you would throw David Johnson into that mix as well as a tier 1 running back. Is there any other running back that's currently being drafted in the first round that you think should be higher up, or guys that are being drafted in the first round that we should probably boot out?
I think everything is good the way it is with the top 4 or 5 guys. And then I think, again, Le'Veon Bell, I'm not sold on him. This is a whole other debate. I have 10 reasons probably right off the top of my head why I would not draft Le'Veon Bell. I don't know if you want to get into that. That's a heated debate.
Well, how about this? How about you just give me the best argument? We'll work from there.
Okay, very simple. Okay, this is going to shock the world, but I need to still be proven that Le'Veon Bell is an elite talent running back. I'm not sold that he is yet, because simple fact that D'Angelo Williams and Connor performed on a similar and sometimes a better level than Le'Veon Bell behind that O-line and that offense. That's it, man. Le'Veon Bell needs to prove to me behind a mediocre O-line if he could do the same thing that he did in Pittsburgh. Until then, I'm not sold that he's an elite running back.
Now, this may surprise you, but I'm kind of with you on this one. I'm a bit pensive about Le'Veon Bell, too. They re-signed Bilal Powell, which actually may hurt his overall market share if he's not playing 95% of the snaps like he saw in Pittsburgh and being utilized out of the backfield to create that floor of 6, 7, 8 targets a game. Then maybe he won't be the fantasy contributor that we maybe saw. Maybe just playing for the Jets and not playing for a high-octane offense like the Steelers is going to be a detriment to him. Like, I think he's a bottom of the top 10 type of running back. He's still going to get there because of volume, but the discussion I've always been having is that people are drafting Bell over James Conner because they're worried about Jalen Samuels. They don't know about James Conner. He petered off when he got hurt at the end of last year. But if you just insert James Conner back into this offense and no Antonio Brown, which could lead to more targets and passing out of the backfield, it seems to me like Conner might be the better pick.
Yeah, to go off on a tangent here, like, I'm also concerned of Benny Snell. Not a lot of people talking about him. The guy is a beast, and I think he may steal some of the goal line work for James Conner. That's one of my main concerns. And my other concern with James Conner is, can he handle a full workload? We saw him get injured last year. Can he have 300, attempts a season? I'm not really sold on him possibly doing that. So those are my kind of question marks with Conner. But going back to Bell for 1 second here, one of the things that he thrived and made him become a huge fantasy producer was his receptions. And looking again, I'm not really an analytical guy, but sometimes I do look at numbers. And looking at the Steelers, he had around 85 receptions the year he really boomed with the Steelers. And looking at their max, I think, and again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but go back and look. I think Robbie Anderson had 50 receptions last year. That's their number 1 wide receiver, 50 receptions. So how the hell is Le'Veon Bell going to produce at 330 fantasy points if he's only going to get, let's even see if he gets 50 receptions, which was, where Robbie Anderson was last year. Again, the numbers don't add up. I just don't see Le'Veon Bell doing it. But like you said, the volume may get him to a reasonable RB2 status. Not sold though.
Yeah, so even like looking back at like between Crowell, McGuire, and Bilal Powell last season, and listen, as much as I shit on the Jets on this show, mainly because of Cust, I am going to acknowledge that maybe their offense has gotten a little bit better. Darnold takes a bit of a step year two. He doesn't gain 800 pounds like he looks like he's going to at some point in his life. It hasn't happened yet, so he's still bit slim and trim, bit athletic. That combined they had around like 45 receptions between the three of them. So if that's just not a part of what they want to do on offense, and maybe bringing in Adam Gase will completely negate that. But it's not like outside of a few outlier weeks with Kenyon Drake like 2 years ago in Miami, it's not like they were a pass happy to the running back offense either. So I can see that. My one thing about the Steelers, and I'm just going to go off history here, what I've seen from Mike Tomlin, that the split between, like you mentioned Snell, but even between like Samuel and Connor, like they've never used a split backfield in the past. And you bring up the names, whether it be D'Angelo Williams, whether it be Fitzgerald Toussaint, like once these guys are in and they are the starting running back, they're the guys that get the run. I'm not too concerned about injuries. Like if Connor breaks down, Connor breaks down. A lot of people get injured a lot of the time. You're just banking on, you hope that these guys stay healthy for the 16 games and you can cash in. So I would doubt that the Steelers all of a sudden this year decide, hey, we now have a goal line back when that's never been in the repertoire before.
Yeah, I totally see that argument. I know like they like to go with the workhorse running back. So yeah, again, that works in the favor of James Conner, but we're going to have to see. I think Snell's too good to ignore near the goal line. And then I don't know, just sheer preservation of Conner. Maybe they want to preserve him because they saw that injury last year. I don't know, but I think Snell is going to be a pest. I really do. I think he's going to be a bit of a vulture. That's my gut feeling. I could be wrong. And I just think that there's other running backs I'd rather have.
I would say the more likelier outcome for Snell in this situation would be that he just takes the job and then the job is his and Connor is useless.
I could see that. I mean, if Connor, messes up a little bit, I could definitely see an emergence of Snell. Snell says he wants to eat from what I've been reading in the reports. He just doesn't want to be a guy that just sits there. I think he's going to get some work.
So between guys like Melvin Gordon seems like a very safe type running back, and he doesn't even need the volume in terms of snap share, historically at least, to produce high-end fantasy numbers. Like, would you throw Joe Mixon into that class as well, of these like fringy top 10 guys?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Melvin Gordon. Again, I don't have the stats in front of me because I live and breathe this stuff, so I got so many numbers and I study this all day. But Melvin Gordon, I think he peaks at around 280 points when he plays a full season. And rarely does he ever finish a full season. So he's not really a guy I really trust. Again, great talent. When he does play, he produces. But I just don't see a high ceiling for him. And who was the other guy you were saying?
Joe Mixon was the other one. If we talk about like Derrick Henry comes on at the end of last year, once Gio Bernard basically got hurt, then the show became Joe Mixon's, and he was playing almost every single snap, getting every single goal line touch. That all of a sudden Joe Mixon just became a fantasy beast.
My concern is, why would you draft 2 6th-round guys? I understand the depth is there, but they drafted Travion Williams, I think Anderson there. I think it's Rodney Anderson, 2 6th-round guys. I don't know if you believe in your guy. I mean, I don't know. Travion Williams apparently is looking good in minicamp, so it's going to be interesting. I'm not really sold on Joe Mixon as it being that guy. Some people draft him as their RB1. I don't feel comfortable with him as an RB1. I don't know what it is.
So, but if you get into a situation where you pick like 11th overall, then you might be stuck with someone like Joe Mixon as the only running back left. You would have your Mixons of the world, your Delvin Cooks, who you already said you don't like. I know you hate Leonard Fournette. So who would become that running back to make your running back one if you got stuck in that position?
We got to get into the Leonard Fournette story in a second. But yeah, if I'm going late first round, if I don't get an ace running back, I may go ace wide receiver, because if you don't get an Adams, Michael Thomas, and I'm all about getting a running back in the first round, but I'm almost okay with going, a Devontae Adams at the end of first round, then going maybe a Derrick Henry, and then going David Montgomery. So I've still got 2 running backs to secure myself to make up for the 1 ace running back I lost. But again, if you don't get that ace wide receiver at the end of the first round, early second, you're not going to get yourself a Michael Thomas, Adams, Hopkins, or anyone like that.
Well, if it's a situation where like you pick, let's say at 10, and then Devontae Adams there, boom, you take Devontae Adams at number 10, or DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas, whoever it might be, whoever people enjoy as the wide receiver 1. Then you get back to your swing. You're not going to take Derrick Henry at like the beginning of the second round. Like, wouldn't you be better off taking another stud wide receiver at that point? Like, just pair him up with Julio?
I may reach because I don't think you're going to get Derrick Henry in the third. You may get him at third round, but fourth round, you may not get him. And you're also going to miss out on David Montgomery and Jacobs. So I'm comfortable reaching. And that's why I kind of like going early in the first round, because it comes back to me. Derrick Henry doesn't look that bad at the end of second round. He may look like a reach early second round, but I'm okay with reaching with Derrick Henry. I don't want to lose him. I think he's going to be something. He could be a bust, but I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah, listen. I mean, this is one of my favorite things. Like as we talked about at the top of the show, like so many guys are. I play in 300 leagues, and I just have a share of everyone. I like everyone. I like this guy. I want to take this guy. Like you don't give a shit about ADPs, do you? Just take the guys that you want to take. I like
ADPs mean nothing to me. They mean nothing to me. Look at last year's ADPs. I mean, who was top running back? It was like Le'Veon Bell, Kareem Hunt. I said, be careful, Kareem Hunt. He had a pinnacle year. Be careful. And also, one fantasy football draft tip that I implore you guys to implement immediately is minimize the amount of question marks surrounding a player. I know it seems like common sense, but I was on Netflix yesterday with the wife and we were watching this show. I think it's called Brain Games. Like common sense is just not that common. That's what they're saying. The mind kind of tricks you. So sometimes it may seem obvious to take that player, but if there's like 50 question marks surrounding them, just avoid that. Just stay away from situations that are toxic. It's common sense.
So would you categorize the Todd Gurley situation as a question mark situation to
Yes.
stay away from?
Toxic. Stay away. Why put yourself in that position? They've got a workhorse, Darrell Henderson, breathing down his neck, who could take the workload himself. I mean, Todd Gurley, again, I still think he's the guy there, but I still think he's going to have some limitations because I'm not a doctor or anything, but I understand arthritis is not good. So you've got cartilage on cartilage or bone on bone, whatever it is, and that friction is going to add up. I just don't see him performing on the same level, but do not discount Todd Gurley, but I'm just going to stay away from the situation and I'm good.
Does there become a breaking point with Todd Gurley though, where you're like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of the third round here. Todd Gurley's on the board. Then you take him, or is it still no, just stay away?
I don't think he'll go to the third round. That is a good question. I don't know. I'm probably going to stay away because I don't want to miss out on David Montgomery. The volume that he could potentially get and the talent and the work ethic that I've seen out of this guy, I'm super excited about David Montgomery. Like Jordan Howard was 6th in attempts. I'm going off on a tangent here, but Jordan Howard was 6th in attempts last year. I think he had 250 attempts, and Jordan Howard has had years to wow. I mean, I'm not wowed. Average, maybe slightly above par running back, but David Montgomery, the ceiling is there. The guy can run, he can catch. I'm excited. Nagy is excited about him. So again, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity of getting a David Montgomery when I can get a guy that's going to be limited in Todd Gurley in the third round, but I don't think he slips that far. Someone will scoop up Gurley mid-second, I think.
See, I like David Montgomery because of the value you can get him right now, whether it's like 4th round, 5th round. But I think that he is a player that does come with a few question marks. I don't think the talent is a question mark, but you still have Tariq Cohen. And I know that if you looked at the combined snap percentage between Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen last year, a lot of the time they were on the field at the same time, but he severely diminishes the potential receiving upside for David Montgomery. And they do have Mike Davis there. And I like Mike Davis. I don't think that he's going to be like a factor, but we saw like in terms of, hey, you want to draft Mike Davis. You do not want to draft Mike Davis, but he is going to be a pest. Like we saw with Benny Cunningham for years in Chicago. And there was that dude on Thanksgiving last year, like Montez Sr., whoever it was. All of a sudden, they're just using some random other running back. It seems like Nagy has a game-to-game approach with this stuff. I think the Montgomery is going to be good, but you mentioned Josh Jacobs in the same breath. I think Jacobs is significantly safer and has way higher upside than Montgomery does.
That is a good point based, with Crowell going down, the upside is there for Jacobs. But then I also look at character. And again, I met Josh Jacobs. I was at the draft, super nice guy, but he's out there partying, going, looking at Gucci purses or shoes or whatever he's doing. I don't know. I watch his story mode. He's looking at like he's out there balling and partying. And again, I don't think that's going to be a huge factor. But David Montgomery, from what I'm reading, he's super focused. He's honed in. I'm not saying Josh Jacobs isn't. But then again, maybe there's some diva coming out there if he's hanging out with Antonio Brown. That I don't know. Again, Antonio Brown's still an elite talent, but I kind of stay away from the divas. I think David Montgomery's focused. And in regards to Tariq Cohen, yes, he'll be a pest, and Davis will be a pest too. But I think Davis is kind of a guy that's just going to be a guy that's going to push Montgomery a little bit. He's going to just be there in the background as a security blanket. He's going to come in for, just give him some breath here, some time to breathe and stuff during some plays, but I don't know. I'm just not sold on Davis being that guy. I think he's just a security blanket.
Okay, well, so we talked about Gurley. If we talk about other question mark guys, and this one is a severe question mark because we don't know the outcome. As we record right now, Tyreek Hill has met with the NFL. We don't know what the suspension is going to be right now, but if you were just randomly drafting, is there a breaking point with Tyreek Hill where you would draft him if he fell far enough, knowing that, hey, you don't know what the suspension is, but all of a sudden if it comes out it's 4 games, you could have a potential wide receiver 1 on your hands here for basically no cost?
This is such a great topic. I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit and kind of tell you my thoughts on this situation. And again, this is my theory, but yes, Tyreek Hill could be good value, but again, you're probably wasting 2 picks because if you get Tyreek, you kind of want to get Hardman. So if you come back on a round, you could be wasting a pick on one of these guys. Now, here's my theory if I'm the Chiefs, and I could be wrong because Tyreek is amazing talent, but if he gets suspended, let's say he's gone for 8 games, and he's coming up to his, he's going to be a free agent, I think March 2020. If I'm Casey, here's what I would do. I would play McCole Hardman, see if he can fill that role properly. If he can, I would release Tyreek Hill because that avoids you paying him the big dollars. And not only that, he's a huge liability. This isn't his first occurrence. Do you want a guy with that reputation, even if it's an alleged thing? I'm not blaming him. Maybe he didn't do what he did. So I'm not going to, I'm not the judge and jury here, whatever it is. But I don't like, if I'm the Chiefs, I don't like that liability. I work Hardman. If he can fill the role, I release Tyreek Hill and I wash my hands of this drama.
I think that sounds very noble, but I don't know if that's exactly what the Chiefs are going to do. Like, it's a different situation. Like, we're not really sure if Hardman's going to actually be good or not. Like, we project him to be good, but what if he's not good? Then all of a sudden, Tyreek Hill, we need him back as quickly as possible. And what if the suspension isn't the 8 games? What if it's like 4 games? I would guess it's probably 4 games at this point because we don't know if this was true or not, or what they're doing to cover it up to make it seem like he didn't do it. I don't know. But if they can pass it off to the NFL that it's only 4 games and it's only the first 4 games, I speak about this a lot, that if you're going to take a guy who's injured or take a guy who's on suspension, at least make sure that he's suspended for the first part of the season because every team is playing. It's not like you're into bye weeks where now you get into trouble. Like, I have no one to replace this guy with. If you told me you get Tyreek Hill for the final 12 weeks of the season, call it the final 10 weeks of the season. Say it takes him 2 weeks to kind of get back into game shape, whatever. And then you have to fill with your wide receiver 4 and your wide receiver 3 position for the first 4 weeks, 6 weeks of the season. I feel like the combined points of Tyreek Hill and whoever you get to plug him in is going to severely outperform that draft position.
I think they're trying to feel McCole Hardman out. If McCole Hardman can perform on an optimal level, maybe my theory will come true. But look what they did to Kareem Hunt. Nobody thought they'd release Kareem Hunt. They did. Now, maybe that can bite them in the ass because if we release Kareem Hunt and look who picked them up, the Browns, right? So maybe that same thing could happen. So they may not release Tyreek Hill. This is what makes it so exciting. We don't know. But again, I think that they feel out McCole Hardman. If he can perform on an optimal level, Tyreek won't be a big thing for them anymore. I think they'll be good without him.
I think it speaks a lot to they just immediately cut Kareem Hunt. They were like, enough of this. Like, we're not even going to wait for a suspension to come out. You're off the team. And then they didn't do that with Tyreek Hill. I think that kind of shows their cards a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they're both bad scenarios. I mean, the kicking of the woman or whatever happened there, even though it was a light kick, we can dive deep into this. I don't agree with it to some degree. It's not even so much that he kicked her. It's just associating yourself with those type of people where they would do things to that to provoke you to. It's just bad negative energy all around that. So I don't know. And the Tyreek thing, again, there's audio of him saying what he said to the wife. I don't know the details of it, but there is something like, I don't know. There's a lot of drama, man. I just wash my hands of this stuff. But again, Tyreek's talent may take over this and they may keep him. But I see an 8-game suspension is my guess.
Yeah, and then 8 games. I mean, he doesn't become undraftable depending on the league that you're in. But if you're in a regular 10 or a regular 12, like, you'd have to wait till like the 14th round in order to take him if he's suspended 8 games. And then you have to bite that bullet and deal with that all year. And then I did this with Josh Gordon for years, and then it never really worked out ever. So I'd probably just wash my hands of that situation. I want to go back up to the top of running backs, though, because there's a few guys we didn't talk about. We talked about the Bells, the Gordons. There's Nick Chubb. And I think that looking at Nick Chubb and his potential upside, I feel like he's better Derrick Henry.
I hate Nick Chubb for fantasy football. Now, he can go off for 8 games or 9 games till Kareem Hunt comes back. Kareem Hunt is the better talent. So a couple of things with Nick Chubb. We haven't seen that he can perform on an optimal level for a full year. So we've seen a small window of what he could do. What he did in that small window is great. And I like him. And I loved Nick Chubb up until I heard about Kareem Hunt coming back. So the thing about him is that I do not want to pay, and I implore you guys to listen to me. He can go off for those 8 games, but why do you want to invest a late first round or early second or even mid second round pick and make this guy your RB1 when you know it's going to be a disaster? Back to the question mark thing. when Kareem Hunt comes back. Kareem Hunt is a better talent. That's my opinion. And some people will say they're going to debate, because I've heard all of these debates. Well, Joe, Kareem Hunt's going to break out, and there's no way they're going to bench him. But I still think you can't sit Kareem Hunt. I think he's just too good to sit, and he's going to be a pest for your fantasy football playoffs.
Okay, so the big question mark, and we'll go back to the Chiefs here. We talk about Kareem Hunt, we talk about Tyreek Hill. They're not in the equation right now. Does Damian Williams have fewer question marks than a lot of people project onto him? And is he actually like super legit?
I'm not sold on him yet. Again, he's got the prototypical body build, that type of thing. But keep your eye out. Darwin Thompson, man. Have you heard much about him yet?
I have not heard basically a peep about him yet.
He is a beast. You want a deep sleeper? This guy's a beast. He squats like 600 pounds. Go look at some videos of him squatting. He's an absolute beast. He can be a workhorse. He can catch. He's dynamic. And I think Reed picked him up for a reason. Look out. I'm not sold on Williams being the workhorse back, because if you look at Williams, I'm going to say this again, years to wow me, and I'm not wowed. Always a backup guy, and I'm not sold on backup guys coming in and take that workload. I'm definitely 100% not sold on Hyde. Darwin Thompson is a guy that could take over. Deep, deep sleeper. Bold prediction.
Okay, it's time to talk about your boy, Lenny Fournette. Tell me about
it. Where do we start? I mean, I got to be honest with you. Okay, like I don't want to be arrogant here, but I'm pretty accurate with my predictions. Last year, I was all in on Fournette. I thought this is the year for Fournette. So I went on saying, I love you, Fournette, and this and that. And then he was doing his stupid things like getting hurt just by falling over lightly. And I'm okay, it's a hamstring thing. And then he was out for like, I don't know, 5-6 weeks. I'm over exaggerating this. He was out for a long time, comes back, and then he fights by the sideline. Like he wasn't even in the game. I think he ran from the side. I guess he got bumped, which provoked him. Then he fights and he gets suspended. And listen, I'm in some expert leagues, and my fantasy league is on the line here. So I went on vlogging and I said, screw you, Fournette, or whatever I said. I love you, then I hate you. And he's been tagged multiple times. Long story short, I basically messaged. I was doing a vlog on him this year, and I think I said something like, I don't believe in him. And then he basically DM'd me. I was calling him Lenny, and maybe that kind of provoked him in the vlog. But he DM'd me and he said, yo, man, I appreciate you being successful, but can you not tag me? So I basically screenshotted that, and then I posted it, and everybody started tagging him. I've also actually called Lenny out to a charity boxing match, which hasn't happened yet. He hasn't replied to that. Mind you, he did reply, but not to the charity boxing match. I think we'll make a lot of money for a local charity if I get him in the ring, because I was really pissed off, man, what he did last year. And again, he could bounce back this year, but me and Lenny, it's this love-hate thing, and it's a weird bromance.
I'm not going to lie to you, man. If you get into a charity boxing match with Leonard Fournette, the charity's going to be for your CTE after that.
I did some MMA in the past. I think,
listen, you may have done some MMA in the past. Dude is a professional athlete. And I don't know how big you are. I assume it's not as big as Leonard Fournette.
No, you know what? I could stick and move, and if I get him on the ground, I may be able to get him in a reverse chokehold in the back and maybe choke him out. But again, it's going to be hard. I've been training. I've been doing some CrossFit if this ever happens.
You better be prepared. I mean, you might want to find your biggest buddy and have him smash you in the face a whole bunch of times and see how you deal with it. Yeah,
Stick and move.
I might throw this out here. He might have better agility and quickness. That's my take on it.
I'll circle around the ring, and maybe he'll bull rush me a little bit, and then maybe I'll tap out, and then maybe we'll make a lot of money. How about that?
That sounds good. As long as it's for charity. I just worry that it might be your charity.
I'll take it for a local charity for sure.
All right, I like that. So who are some other guys on the do not draft list for you? Because it sounds like from what you're saying, Fournette is on that list.
Oh man, there's a lot. And here's the thing. My draft strategy is a little bit different. I try to really aim high on depth chart. So I'm seeing people draft like Kalen Ballage, guys that are lower on the depth chart. Naheem Hines, guys like that I would never touch, because especially when you go into later rounds, always try to aim high on the depth chart, even though they're not as good of a running back or not as big of a name. So for example, I would rather reach for a Darwin Thompson on my bench, or an Alexander Madison, who I absolutely love this year. Because here's another guy you do not draft, Dalvin Cook. It just got me thinking, give me Alexander Madison in the 10th round, bench stash over Dalvin Cook in the second. There's no way in hell I'm touching Dalvin Cook. The hell with that.
Anyone else from this high end? I'm liking this. Just keep spitting them at me here. Tell me who
man,
not
I got
to draft.
give me a list here. I'm not even thinking. So Chubb, I don't like. Dalvin Cook, I don't like. I got to bring out a list here, man. There's a lot of people I don't like.
I'll start reeling it off, and you don't need to be super high on someone, but you don't need to be super down on someone. It's okay to be meh on some of these guys.
Okay.
How about Devonta Freeman?
Freeman, I'm meh. I think the upside is there, but again, throw first team. Is he going to come back? Is he going to be up to form? Is he going to be trustworthy? They drafted a running back. What's his name? Kadri Wilson or something like that. They've got Ito Smith. Ito Smith doesn't excite me, but I think Freeman could have a safe season, maybe just outside the top 10 or in the top 10. I think he's a good guy.
Yeah,
good, he runs with a lot of power.
And if that's the case, his draft value is worth it because he's going like the 4th, 5th round. So how about Kerryon Johnson?
You know what? There's everything, all signs pointing to say that he could be the workhorse there. Again, CJ Anderson could be a pest there. I'm going to stay away from him simply for the fact that I just hate Detroit when it comes to running backs. Just hate them.
Phillip Lindsay coming off the big breakout season, then the injury, and now we got Royce Freeman back in the mix, and now we have Joe Flacco at quarterback, not Case Keenum.
You know, again, with Phillip Lindsay, I just think the guy is suffering with little man syndrome. It's not a guy I like. I don't know, man. He's just chippy and annoying. Every time he gets off a play, gets in people's faces. I know this is a personal thing because I owned Royce Freeman. I was pissed when Lindsay broke out of nowhere. So this year, I'm really actually observing every single committee to see who, undrafted or drafted, who could break out and take away the starting spot. I just keep getting it, sharper every year. But again, Lindsay, I just don't like him. I just don't think he's obviously very small. And I know people say, yeah, he's small, but he's powerful and all that. He did well last year. I'm just not sold on him being a workhorse. Royce Freeman comes in and he gets more work this year.
How about Darius Geis this season?
That is a mess there, man. Again, talent is there, but first of all, again, question mark, coming off injury. That's a big thing. Peterson's already said he wants to rush for 2,000 yards. He's ready to go again.
Well,
I'm not really
hold on. Yeah. Peterson's not rushing for 2,000 yards. Let's be, he can believe whatever he wants. That's not happening.
I know, but he's saying, but what I'm getting from that is he still wants to stay on the field, still wants to be the lead guy there. So he's trying to make a name for himself. And then this guy's a little banged up. I met him at the draft. Super, super nice guy. Bryce Love and super talented. I don't think he's going to be a factor this year, but look out for him. Again, I'm staying away from Washington, period.
Are there any other committee backfields that you're staying away from, or are there some to target that you have a feel for? Like, do you have a feel for the Niners backfield, the Eagles backfield, anything like that?
It's like you're already a step ahead. Just stay away from the Eagles backfield, the Patriots backfield, stay away from the 49ers backfield and the Washington Redskins backfield, and you're going to be a happy person.
I have no problem drafting James White. James White has been so good the past 3 years. Just regardless of what happens in that Patriots backfield, he's not going to have the most consistency, but it's going to be pretty good. So for 10 games a year, he's going to have 9 catches. And where you have to draft him, that's fine.
But then again, you've got the Devlin James or James Devlin or whatever the hell his name is.
But that stuff doesn't affect James White. That affects Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead and the other guys.
Yeah.
White's role was
Damian.
What about
Damian
who?
Damian Harris. He's going to be he's in there too.
Yeah, but that's not going to affect James White at all. Again, that's someone else to throw into the mix with Sony Michel and the guys that you rely on to pile up yardage on the ground and get goal line touch. With James White, he's going to be passed to. That's his only role on the team. He might not even carry the ball in a game and score 20 fantasy points.
Right. He could be a safe flex play, but it's just not a guy I draft. Again, on my mentality, I'm very, very particular. I want workhorses. I want minimal committees. I want volume attempts, volume.
Yeah, but
I'm very greedy.
Yeah, I understand. Listen, if I could just get volume in the 9th round, I would take it every single time. That's just not available to me. I'm either drafting backups where I need someone to get hurt, or I can take a flyer on someone like James White, who I know is good, only for PPR scoring, not even thinking about it in standard, but knowing I have that guy around, that helps mitigate either my flex spot or if one of my running backs gets hurt or is on a bye, I just plug him in. I know what I'm getting, and that's really good too. Listen, I'm not trying to score the most points every single week. I'm just trying to win every single week.
Right.
And sometimes having the best player in fantasy can really go a long way to helping you win every week, but not having zeros on your roster goes a long way too.
That's true. And then again, that's why I kind of aim high on the depth chart as I go through each round, and I try to hit home runs with everything I've got. And that's kind of where I've been at. And it's been very successful for me. I don't know. I just get bothered knowing that it's a committee there. And yeah, if you want the safe numbers, James White could put him up for sure. He's value for where he's at this year for sure.
So if you're aiming for upside, this is a question I keep asking everyone because I'm really torn on it. How high is too high for Travis Kelce then?
I'm not drafting a tight end in the first couple rounds. I've just learned from that. Like last year, I think Gronk was the guy said, avoid Gronk. And I got Kittle, I think, in the 10th round. So for this year, how am I going to maintain that, avoid the tight end and still get good value? Well, what I do is, here's a rule. I double up on tight ends. So this year, I'm okay with going with Vance McDonald because I think there's a lot of targets there. I can get him in around maybe 5th to 7th round. Now I'm talking experts league. He could slip down farther in other leagues. But I get Vance McDonald and I back him up with a Noah Fant or a TJ Hawkinson or even a Greg Olsen. And I feel pretty secure at tight end. I will never invest in a tight end that early.
You don't feel like having 2 tight ends on your team is a waste of a draft, like a waste of a roster spot? Because I feel it's like having a backup quarterback. Like there's no need for it.
I just feel comfortable doing that. I always like having a backup quarterback if it's the right quarterback. Like last year, I housed Drew Brees and I had Matt Ryan as a backup. In other leagues, I had Drew Brees or Matt Ryan, then I had Mahomes as a backup. So I always get a couple wild cards with upside on my bench. I feel totally comfortable with, investing in a backup tight end with a big ceiling that I could plug in that could be top 5, like I did last year with Kittle.
So, yeah, I mean, Kittle's really, you have to be able to, I mean, if you identify Kittle, he's the guy that you have and he breaks out. You're absolutely one of the 3 best teams in your league just based on the value of position. That's why I keep bringing up this Kelsey thing, that if there is no Tyreek Hill, maybe Hardman's not the greatest, Sammy Watkins is perpetually dinged up, maybe Damian Williams flames out a little bit, that opens up Travis Kelsey to be, if you took the tight end tag away from him and he's a wide receiver, he'd be a top 10 wide receiver, but you get to play him at tight end, which is such an advantage.
Right. I totally agree with that. And yeah, you could go Kelsey in the 2nd round because you'll probably get more points out of him than a T.Y. Hilton where there's a ton of targets. So yeah, I mean, I may consider him just based on that because he's going to put up, wide receiver 1 number. So you would consider them. I just personally don't draft a tight end early. But yeah, definitely I see your point of view and a lot of people say that.
Yeah, it's just when I start to think about it, like I like Ertz, I like Kittle, I think they're both great, but I don't want to pay their draft cost, like 3rd round draft price. But with Kelsey, it seems like he's on a tier above all these guys. And even if you say, let's say Kelsey and T.Y. Hilton score approximately the same amount of fantasy points this year, well, the fact that you can get those fantasy points from tight end, not wide receiver, makes them like 1.5 times as valuable.
Right. I totally agree. And Kelsey's a guy you definitely could trust in the 2nd round. This guy finished top tight end 3 years in a row or something like that. So yeah, man, I totally see your point of view on that. I can agree.
All right, let's talk some sleepers towards the back end before we get out of here. Who are some guys that you're targeting after round 10, let's say, that are winding up on a lot of your teams?
There's a lot of good players this year. I really like Deebo Samuel. And again, I do a lot of hot takes like this. And I just think Deebo Samuel talent-wise is just so amazing based on highlights only tell you one thing or another, but he's going on a team where, Goodwin's just not that good. And we also have Pettis, who really didn't do much. And I understand Garoppolo wasn't there for the season, but I'm not really sold as Pettis as a wide receiver 1. So I'd see Deebo Samuel being a guy, and we can elaborate on this, but Alexander Madison, I like Darwin Thompson as a sleeper. I like TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant as some sleepers. And again, a lot of these guys are young rookie guys, but I think they're in a position to really succeed this year. And I also like Ronald Jones. If you can get him, I think this could be a breakout year.
Yeah, I mean, you can get Ronald Jones super late. I actually kind of gravitate towards Peyton Barber just a little bit. It's almost like the Chris Carson Penny situation from last year. And a lot of this is going to have to really rely upon what we hear out of OTAs, what we hear through the preseason. But it just became clear by like week 2 of the preseason that Pete Carroll loves Chris Carson. Chris Carson is going to be the starting running back. Penny's not going to do much. I'm waiting to hear that out of Tampa Bay because I could see Bruce Arians just going with the veteran. And frankly, Ronald Jones wasn't put in a position to succeed last year, but he also just didn't see the field when he was healthy either. That does have to tell you something.
There's a bit of a bromance with me and Peyton Barber actually too. Last year, and I feel kind of bad about this, but I got to be honest. This thing I was saying last year is Peyton Barber sucks, and I hammered it out there, and I did a bunch of posts on it. And he actually went on my comments multiple times. Thanks for the fire and motivation, brother, blah, blah, blah. So he's really motivated because of my hate. But I don't hate these guys as people. I think they're probably great people, great athletes. But Peyton Barber does suck. He is just a guy that's safe. He was, I think, 9th in attempts last year, finished 31st, okay? He had more attempts than guys like CMC, and you just can't do anything with him. He's a safe guy. Good ball security, moves the ball forward when they need to. But I think Ronald Jones has that breakout potential. And I just see the upside there, but he needs the opportunity to shine. Ronald Jones hasn't had that real opportunity to go.
Yeah, I just don't know if he ever ends up seeing that. A lot of the downside to Peyton Barber last year was that for like the first 8 weeks of the season, he wouldn't get a touch inside the 5 because Jameis would just continuously throw, or Fitzpatrick would just continuously throw. Barber did even himself out at the end. I'm just trying to, like, if we're talking about like running backs from beyond the 10th round, that's where these dudes are going. Like, if you're trying to mine a potential workhorse, I think it could be one or the other, but I think both are on the table as a player in the Tampa backfield that could see 20 touches a game. I don't know which one it is.
Definitely. Again, obviously the ceiling is higher with Ronald Jones. Again, Peyton Barber, what we've seen is what we get, just a super safe guy, not expecting anything special out of him at all. But again, Ronald Jones, again, has it. They're saying he's one of the most improved players on that team. Excited to see what he can do because that's a second round draft pick. They're going to see if it was worth it this year.
With Alexander Mattison, is that just a pure play on Dalvin Cook always gets hurt?
That's a play on that he was a workhorse in college and the fact that Dalvin, it's a combination of both, really. I think he's in a good position to succeed. And I like him. I just like the opportunity. Just stash him, see what happens. It can't hurt you to have a bench spot for a guy that could take the starting job there when Dalvin Cook goes down, and he will.
Any more guys from these later rounds besides Debo? Any other receivers you're looking at?
I'm trying to think here. I think Sterling Shepard, but I don't think you can get him too late. Probably 5th round, but I think he's flying under a lot of people's radar. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 there. And what gets me is that Odell, no matter what the situation, you're buying his name. For the past 2 years, people bought his name, drafted him in the 1st round, and people call me crazy for drafting Sterling Shepard in the 5th or 6th. I think that's an enormous value, great hands, great talent. He's not Odell good dynamic, but I think he's going to have a good year, man. I really do.
You just don't like. I just worry about all these Giants receivers because Eli sucks, and then we get into a situation where he gets like yanked in week 7, and then Daniel Jones is in, and he might suck too. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You got the uncertainty with that O-line, that type of thing. But again, it's just on sheer volume. I totally trust them. I'm trying to go over some other. I just have a list here. A couple other guys I like. Now, here's the thing. I do like. Could potentially, here's a total wild card, but Andy Isabella could break out. We got Paris Campbell in a position, but again, with the Cardinals receivers, there's too much talent there. We don't know who Kyler is going to gravitate to there. Another guy, I'm just trying to think here. It's going to be hard to trust this guy, but Godwin, he's probably like a 5th, 6th round. There is a high ceiling for him as well. Based on with Humphreys being gone and Deshaun Jackson, Godwin could get a lot of volume as well. But again, this is more of a mid-round guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, Godwin's just been the trendy guy through basically ever since the moment Deshaun Jackson went back to the Eagles. Chris Godwin has been like, oh my God, he's going to be great. Like, he's being ranked and drafted as a top 20 wide receiver right now.
Right. But again, you're going to be torn in around the 4th, 5th round, depending on your league and how many people are in it. 4th, 5th round, you're going to be torn between Godwin and Golladay. And I think Galladay's ceiling is huge. He could be a huge breakout player this year, just on sheer volume. I mean, everybody's gone there. Who else? They're even talking about trading Marvin Jones and stuff like that. So he is the guy they believe in. They call him Mini Megatron for a reason. His receptions were insane. His target count, was insane at the end of the season. So look for Golladay for a big season this year.
Yeah, I like Golladay over Chris Godwin too, and they are basically being drafted back to back. The other like monkey wrench being thrown in there is the returning Cooper Kupp, and based on what you've told me about not drafting players coming back off injury, I assume he's a cross-off for you, although I do like Cooper Kupp.
I agree. I think Kupp could have a good season, maybe call it a fluke injury that season. I just think Robert Woods goes down this year. Again, Robert Woods, another guy, years to wow me. I wasn't wowed in Buffalo, comes on to the Rams, becomes a big name, and he was good in college. I get it, but I think Kupp's going to be the primary target there for sure.
I mean, does anyone ever really look good in Buffalo?
Not really, to be honest. Maybe Josh Allen. That's another guy you could stash. I see the ceiling. Here's a fact here.
I love Josh Allen.
I love him. And the fact that he can run. And here's the thing. If you guys look at the stat, here's another thing that pisses me off with ADP. Now, Mayfield could be a top 3 quarterback. I get it. The upside is huge. I mean, he's a great quarterback, could be a great quarterback, and he's got great targets. But if you look at the last, I think it's 5 or 6 games. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But again, 145 fantasy points for Josh Allen. I think the last 5 to 7 games, I can't remember the exact number, compared to 111 to Baker Mayfield. So again, there's a high, like he outperformed Baker Mayfield at the end of the season. But again, Odell and the other guys weren't on the team that time.
Yeah, and you have the Kitchens taking over. He can implement more of his offense. You hope for more of a breakout in year 2, at least from a passing ability from Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was the number 1 overall pick. You expect the talent level to be a bit higher. He's going to be a bigger name, but he's being drafted in the 6th round, and Josh Allen is going undrafted. I guess the big concern about Josh Allen is, will he continue to run? And frankly, I don't even think he needs to run as much as he did to retain some of that. I don't think Baker Mayfield's the comp for him. I think the people drafting like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson as like fringy top 10 quarterbacks, you don't need to when Josh Allen is basically the same as those guys, potentially even better because he has the best arm of all of them too.
Yeah, I love the ceiling. They also improved the O-line, the Bills did. So, I mean, there's so much excitement to be excited about Josh Allen as a guy you could stash as a backup that could be a top 5 quarterback. Yeah, I said it. That's how much of a ceiling this guy has. But yet again, the big gap between where Mayfield is and where Allen is, I mean, I give me Allen like right here, and I would stay away from with quarterbacks. You have more of a trend you can follow and see a consistent pattern. It's not as volatile as, let's say, a running back. So that's why I like to anchor my team with an ace quarterback. And this year I'm all in on Luck or Ryan as my ace.
I mean, if in that situation, I would think that Ryan ends up on most of your teams, so you don't have to waste like a 5th round draft pick on a quarterback. You can wait till like the 9th or 10th round.
Right. And I'm seeing Luck come off in the 4th. I see a ton of mock drafts.
That's way too high for a quarterback when you could have Josh Jacobs in that round or Montgomery in that round.
But the way I'm seeing it based on mock drafts, I'm on the calculator, fantasy football calculator. I have no affiliation with them by any means, but I use them as a mock draft. And I always see, and people are coming, I see Jacobs always come off in the 3rd. I see Mahomes always come off in the 3rd. And I see Rodgers and Luck, and it doesn't matter what order, always seem to come off in the 4th and as late as the 5th. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I just think that there's, unless you are just convinced that this guy is definitely going to lead the league, almost like you would have to hit on, I mean, people didn't draft Mahomes this way last year, but if you had just gotten Mahomes in the 4th round last year, you were laughing because he was so damn good. But It's hard to find that quarterback who has that outlier season, and it's not usually the quarterback at the top of drafts. It's usually like the guy who went 13th overall towards the back end, and he has the huge breakout that no one saw coming. Like, it seems like there's just too much variance with these quarterbacks, and the gap between them makes them not worth the high-end pick when you can mine similar value or even potentially more fantasy points in double the rounds.
Yeah, I'm not paying the Pat Mahomes price, but the safest quarterbacks to draft this year would have to be Mahomes. But again, I'm not paying the price. Rodgers, but again, there's a lot of conflict with him and LaFleur. Now, I don't know what's going on there. And Luck and Ryan, I'd probably consider as your safest this year. And then you've got the breakout potential of guys like Mayfield, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, guys like that.
Yeah, I'd throw Deshaun Watson into that quarterback one mix too, just because of the rushing ability and potential touchdowns that he can bring to the board. All right, Joe, before we get out of here, anything else you want to touch on?
No, nothing. I appreciate you being here. Love what you're doing here with your show. Keep up the hard work. And make sure you guys are following me on Insta at Fantasy Football Counselor. And I appreciate everybody for being here and listening and taking the time out of their day.
Yeah, Fantasy Football Counselor on Instagram, Fantasy Football Counselor on YouTube. You can check out all Joe's videos up there. For me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or the Facebooks at the PME. Subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast wherever you can download podcasts. Always up there, uncut, on demand whenever you want it, and the DraftKings YouTube channel and DKPlaybook.com for all my lists of rankings. Completely free, too, so you can go check that out. Mock them as much as you want. But remember, if you follow them and they're wrong, you just trusted some random free dude on the internet, and that's your fault, not mine. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!